In the misty hills of ancient Ireland, where the boundary between our world and the other world grows thin in winter's twilight, lived a farmer's daughter named Cloda. She dwelt in a small stone cottage with her father Patrick, whose gentle hands could coax life from the stubbornest soil in 3 counties, her stepmother Orla, whose beauty was matched only by the coldness in her heart, and her stepsister Mary, who carried herself like a princess though she'd never known a castle. Cloda had her mother's fire-red hair and eyes as green as moss after rain. Though her mother had passed into the other world when Cloda was but a child, she'd left her daughter 2 precious gifts: a silver pendant shaped like a snowflake, and the knowledge of the old ways, the songs and stories of the Sidhe, the fair folk who dwelled in the hollow hills. Life was not easy for Cloda. While her father was away trading at the markets, Orla would set her to impossible tasks: gathering dewdrops before sunrise in a sieve, sorting a mountain of dried peas from dried beans before nightfall, or spinning rough wool into thread as fine as gossamer. Yet Cloda never complained, for she had a secret ally, her massive Irish wolfhound Bran. Bran was no ordinary dog. Found as a pup in the woods on midwinter's eve, he had grown to the size of a small pony, with fur the colour of storm clouds and eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. The villagers whispered that he must be descended from the legendary hounds of the Fianna themselves, perhaps even from Bran and Scolang, the enchanted dogs of Fionn MacCumhale. When Cloda wept from her step-family's cruelty, Bran would comfort her. When she needed help with her impossible tasks, he would mysteriously find ways to aid her, nudging her toward ant colonies that would help sort the peas and beans, or leading her to spider webs filled with the finest silk to mix with the rough wool. One bitter winter's day, when the wind howled like the banshees themselves, Orla came to Cloda with tears streaming down her face. "Oh, my dear," she cried, though her eyes remained cold as ice. "Bran has run away into the forbidden forests of the Sidhe. I saw him chase a white hare into those cursed woods." Cloda knew it was a trick. Bran would never leave her, but she also knew her faithful friend would come looking for her if she ventured into the forest. Despite all warnings about entering the fairy woods in winter, and over the protests of her father who begged her to wait until he returned, Cloda wrapped herself in her warmest shawl and set out into the gathering storm. The forest was unlike anything Cloda had ever seen. Snow fell in patterns that seemed to spell out words in the ancient language, then swirled away before she could read them. The trees whispered to each other in voices just beyond her understanding. As darkness fell and the cold began to bite through her thin shawl, strange lights danced between the trees, the will-o'-the-wisps that were known to lead travellers astray. Just when her legs would carry her no further, Cloda stumbled into a moonlit clearing. There stood a figure that took her breath away. Finn, king of the Winter Sea, though she did not yet know his name. He was tall as a young oak, with hair white as hoarfrost and eyes like midwinter midnight. His cloak seemed woven from shadow and starlight, and where his feet touched the ground, patterns of ice crystals bloomed. Unlike his cruel reception of proud Mary, who would later demand the same gifts and find herself lost in an ordinary forest, Finn was moved by Cloda's courage and kindness. He had watched her for many moons, seeing how she bore her hardships with grace, how she left milk for the good neighbours despite her stepmother's scorn, how she remembered the old songs and treated all creatures with respect. "You've no need to fear me, Cloda of the morning mist," he said, his voice like winter wind through the ice-laden branches. "I know why you've come. Your Bran is safe. He has been helping me prepare my gift for you." With a gesture, he transformed the clearing into a wonderland. Frozen waterfalls caught the moonlight like trapped rainbows. Trees bore crystalline fruit that chimed in the breeze, and the air itself seemed to sparkle with suspended snowflakes. Throughout the long winter months that followed, Finn courted Cloda in the way of the Sidhe. He left her gifts that could only have come from the other world, a cloak woven from the northern lights that kept her warm no matter how bitter the cold, shoes made from unmelting ice that never felt cold and let her dance on snowdrifts, and flowers fashioned from frost that bloomed on her window each morning. Each gift was accompanied by a riddle or task, for the Sidhe never give anything freely. But Cloda, schooled in the old ways by her mother, knew how to answer with courtesy and wisdom. As Imbolc approached and the first stirrings of spring touched the land, Cloda's heart grew heavy. She knew the power of the Winter Sidhe waned with the coming of warm days. On the last night of winter, As the sun set on a world caught between seasons, Finn appeared at her window one final time. He offered her a crown made of crystallized hawthorn blossoms and moonlight. 3 times I ask, as is our way, he said, will you join me in Tír na Nog, where winter holds a magic all its own? Will you rule beside me as queen of the winter Sidhe? Will you dance with me in halls of crystal until the last star falls? Cloda thought of her father and felt a moment's sorrow. But when she touched the snowflake pendant at her throat, she felt her mother's understanding and blessing flow through her. 3 times I answer yes, she replied, for my heart has known your name since first I heard the winter wind sing. Their wedding was celebrated in a crystal palace beyond the western sea, where the walls were carved from glacier ice and the ceilings were the very northern lights. The Sidhe themselves danced at their feast, and musicians played harps strung with phoenix hair. Bran, who had indeed been waiting there all along, took his place as guardian of their realm, accompanied by his long-lost kin, the great wolfhounds of the other world. Patrick's life as a farmer had taught him patience with the seasons, and so he was given a gift of his own, the sight to navigate between the worlds, so he might visit his daughter in her new home. As for Orla and Mary, they learned to watch the winter winds with fear, for they never knew when the Queen of Winter might remember their cruelties. They say that on certain summer days, when a cool breeze suddenly stirs the leaves and brings the scent of snow, it's Cloda, the Winter Queen, visiting the mortal world. She leaves traces of frost on meadow flowers and whispers of winter's beauty in the hearts of those who still remember the old tales. Then she returns through the veil to her beloved Finn and their eternal winter wonderland in Tír na Nog, where the magic of the first frost never fades. This tale is still told around peat fires in Ireland, passed down by those who keep the old wisdom alive. It reminds us that kindness brings its own magic, that true love knows no boundaries between worlds, and that in the deepest winter, the greatest wonders bloom.